I've been working on Japanese imports for 19 years. About 6 years ago, I started noticing something strange. Toyotas and Hondas coming in from Japan with auction sheets showing 150,000 kilometers felt different. Smoother, quieter. I'd pop the hood expecting typical wear and instead find engines that looked like they had half the mileage. Valve covers clean. Oil pan bolts with fresh torque marks. These weren't garage queens. They were daily drivers in Tokyo traffic. In 2018, I flew to Japan for an auto auction in Yokohama. I started asking the mechanics there about maintenance intervals. One guy, maybe in his 60s, looked at me like I'd asked why water is wet. He said, "We change transmission fluid every 30,000 kilometers. Always, your customers in America, they wait too long. The car doesn't lie." I came home and pulled service records on every used import we processed. The pattern was undeniable. Japanese owners were doing things on intervals so short that American buyers would call them wasteful. But their cars were outlasting ours by 100,000 miles. Same Toyota Camry, same Honda CR-V, different continent, different outcome. American service schedules aren't designed to destroy your car. They're designed around convenience and profit margin. A dealership makes almost nothing on an oil change. They make serious money on a transmission replacement, an engine rebuild, a turbocharger swap. Longer intervals mean fewer appointments, lower labor costs for the dealer, and higher repair bills for you 5 years later. Japanese maintenance philosophy runs opposite. Spend $300 a year on preventive maintenance to avoid spending $4,000 on a repair. Treat fluids like perishable goods, not lifetime fills. The same Honda Fit scrapped in Ohio at 180,000 miles is still running delivery routes in Osaka at 350,000. Here's every fluid change and check that Japanese mechanics prioritize that Western buyers never think to ask about. Number 1. Automatic transmission fluid every 30,000 miles. Americans treat transmission fluid like it's optional. In Japan, it's the first thing checked on any used vehicle. Walk into a used car lot in Nagoya and the sales guy doesn't start with the stereo or the paint. He starts with the transmission service record. If the fluid hasn't been changed every 30,000 kilometers, the price drops or the car doesn't sell. Transmission fluid doesn't just lubricate gears. It operates under extreme pressure to actuate clutch packs and control valve bodies. As it ages, it oxidizes. The friction modifiers break down. Metal particles from normal wear start circulating. Those particles score the valve body. The oxidized fluid can't maintain pressure. Shift quality degrades. Then the transmission starts slipping. By the time you feel it, the damage is done. Do a drain and fill, not a flush. Use only manufacturer-specific fluid. For Toyota, that's WS fluid. For Honda, it's DW1. Never use universal ATF. I pulled a transmission out of a 2015 Accord last year. The owner bought it used at 70,000 miles with no service records. At 120,000 miles, it wouldn't go into third gear. I dropped the pan. The fluid was black. The magnet was caked in metal shavings. The filter screen was half clogged. That transmission was toast. A drain and fill every 30,000 miles costs about $150. A remanufactured transmission costs $4,000. Dealerships call it lifetime fluid. It's lifetime until it isn't, and when it fails, they sell you a new transmission. Number 2. Differential fluid every 50,000 miles. Western buyers obsess over engine oil. Japanese buyers obsess over differential fluid. Most people don't even know their car has a differential. If you've got a rear-wheel drive car, a truck, or an all-wheel drive crossover, you've got at least one differential. Some AWD vehicles have 3. That fluid is working just as hard as your transmission fluid and almost nobody changes it. The gears in your differential are under constant load, bathed in gear oil that lubricates and cools them. That oil breaks down, it gets contaminated with metal particles, it loses viscosity. When it fails, the gears start wearing fast. You'll hear a whine from the rear end, then a growl, then it locks up. Use the manufacturer-specified weight. Toyota recommends 75W85 for most models. Some trucks need 75W90. Check your owner's manual. I've seen Lexus GX 470s with over 300,000 miles on the original differential because the owner changed the fluid religiously. I've also seen 4Runners grenade their rear diffs at 130,000 because nobody touched the fluid. Differential service costs about $120. A rebuilt differential costs $2,000. You're paying a tenth of the repair cost to prevent the repair entirely. Dealerships don't mention it because it's buried in the service manual under severe duty, which basically means if you drive the car, it qualifies as severe duty. Number 3. Brake fluid every 2 years regardless of mileage. Most Western buyers check brake pads, almost none check brake fluid. In Japan, brake fluid is considered a consumable. It gets changed every 2 years without exception. Brake fluid is hygroscopic. It absorbs water. Moisture seeps in over time through microscopic pores in the rubber hoses. That water lowers the boiling point of the fluid. When you use your brakes hard, the fluid heats up. If there's enough water in it, the fluid boils. When it boils, it turns to vapor. Vapor compresses, your pedal goes soft, your stopping distance doubles. Beyond safety, old brake fluid corrodes the inside of your brake calipers and master cylinder. Those aluminum and steel components start pitting, seals fail, leaks develop, the corrosion is permanent. Use .3 or .4 depending on what your car specifies. Don't mix them. Don't use fluid from a bottle that's been open for months. Brake fluid absorbs moisture from the air the second you crack the seal. A brake fluid flush costs around $90. A master cylinder replacement costs $500. Caliper replacements add another $300 per corner. There's no warning light for degraded brake fluid and no obvious symptom until something fails. Most shops make more money replacing calipers than flushing fluid. The incentive to tell you doesn't exist. Number 4. Engine coolant every 60,000 miles or 5 years. In the US, manufacturers say coolant is good for 100,000 miles or more. Japanese mechanics treat it like milk. It has a shelf life, and once it's expired, it's doing more harm than good. Coolant does 3 things: transfers heat away from the engine, prevents freezing, and prevents corrosion inside the cooling system. The corrosion inhibitors break down over time. Once depleted, the coolant starts attacking aluminum cylinder heads, radiator cores, and water pump housings. You get pinhole leaks in the radiator. The water pump seals fail. The heater core clogs. I tore down a Camry V6 last winter. The owner never changed the coolant. At 150,000 miles, the engine overheated. I pulled the thermostat housing. The internal passages were caked with scale and corrosion. The water pump impeller was half eaten away. Use the correct coolant type. Toyota uses pink long-life coolant. Honda uses blue. They are not interchangeable. Don't use universal green coolant unless your manual specifically calls for it. A coolant flush costs about $130. A new radiator costs $400. A water pump replacement costs $600. An overheated engine costs $4,000. Shops don't push coolant service because there's no dipstick. It's out of sight, and most customers won't approve a service they can't see a need for. Number 5. Power steering fluid every 50,000 miles. Power steering fluid is one of the most ignored fluids in any car. If your vehicle has hydraulic power steering, that fluid is breaking down right now. Most cars built before 2015 use hydraulic systems. The fluid circulates under high pressure, gets hot, oxidizes, and picks up metal particles from the pump and rack. As it degrades, it stops lubricating the pump. You'll hear a whine when you turn the wheel. The steering gets notchy. Then the pump seizes or the rack starts leaking. Use the fluid your manufacturer specifies. Honda uses genuine Honda PSF. Toyota often uses ATF. Check your manual. I've seen Lexus LS sedans with original power steering racks at 300,000 miles because the owner changed the fluid every 50,000. I've also seen Accords need rack replacements at 140,000 because the fluid was never touched. Power steering fluid service costs about $80. A new power steering pump costs $500. A rack and pinion replacement costs $1,200. Most service centers don't mention it because it's not on the standard service menu and there's no upsell potential unless something is already broken. Number 6. Transfer case fluid every 60,000 miles. This one applies if you've got a 4-wheel drive truck or all-wheel drive SUV. The transfer case splits power between the front and rear axles. It has its own fluid completely separate from the transmission. That fluid lubricates gears and chains under constant load. As it breaks down, friction increases. The chains stretch, the gears wear. You'll hear a grinding noise during acceleration, then a howl, then catastrophic failure requiring a full replacement. Most transfer case services are a single drain and fill bolt. The process takes 15 minutes. Use the manufacturer-specified fluid. Most trucks use ATF or a specific transfer case fluid. I worked on a 4Runner last year where the owner had bought it used with no records. At 170,000 miles, the transfer case started howling. I drained the fluid. It came out looking like glitter paint. The chain had disintegrated. That transfer case was done. Transfer case service costs about $100. A replacement transfer case costs $3,000. The service is buried in the severe duty schedule, and most buyers don't even know their vehicle has a transfer case until it fails. Number 7. Spark plugs every 60,000 miles, not 100,000. In the US, manufacturers say iridium or platinum plugs are good for 100,000 miles. Japanese mechanics replace them at 60,000. Spark plugs do more than ignite fuel. They also dissipate heat from the combustion chamber. As the electrode wears, the gap widens. A wider gap requires more voltage to fire, which stresses the ignition coil. A worn plug doesn't burn fuel efficiently. You lose power, fuel economy drops, misfires start. Unburned fuel can damage the catalytic converter. I've seen coil packs fail on Hondas and Toyotas right after 100,000 miles because the plugs were left in too long. The coils were working overtime trying to fire worn electrodes. Use OEM plugs. Aftermarket plugs might be cheaper, but they don't always match the heat range or electrode design. I've pulled aftermarket plugs out after 20,000 miles and found the electrodes already eroded. A set of 6 spark plugs costs about $60. Labor is around $150 for a V6. Ignition coils cost $120 each. A catalytic converter costs $1,200. Dealers push the 100,000-mile interval because it's one less service appointment. You pay for it in coil replacements and fuel economy loss. Number 8. Cabin air filter every 15,000 miles. Engine air filter every 30,000. In Japan, these get checked every oil change and replaced the moment they're dirty. A clogged engine air filter restricts airflow. The engine compensates by running rich. You burn more fuel, lose power, and carbon builds up on the intake valves. A dirty cabin air filter restricts airflow to your HVAC system. The blower motor works harder, draws more current, and eventually burns out. I've replaced blower motors on cars where the cabin filter was so clogged it looked like a dryer vent. Engine air filters cost about $25. Cabin filters cost about $15. Both are easy to change yourself. A blower motor replacement costs $400. A set of fouled intake valves costs $1,000 to walnut blast clean. Western buyers wait until the check engine light comes on or the AC stops working. Japanese owners treat filters the same way they treat oil. Cheap insurance with a specific replacement interval. Number 9. Rotate tires every 5,000 miles. Japanese mechanics rotate tires religiously at every oil change interval. Uneven tire wear doesn't just shorten tire life. It affects alignment, handling, and braking. When front tires wear faster than rears, the car pulls to one side. The anti-lock braking system can't function correctly because wheel speeds don't match. I've seen customers come in with highway vibrations where the front 2 tires were worn to the cords on the inside edge while the rears still had half their tread. That's a 50,000-mile alignment problem that started as a skipped rotation. Most tire shops do rotations free if you bought the tires there. It takes 10 minutes. A set of 4 tires costs $600. Rotating every 5,000 miles can extend their life by 20,000 miles. That's an extra 2 years before replacement, plus better fuel economy and safer braking. Tire shops won't remind you because they'd rather sell you tires. Number 10. Clean battery terminals every 6 months. Corrosion builds up on battery terminals and increases resistance. Your alternator has to work harder to charge the battery. Your starter has to pull more current to crank the engine. Over time, the added load shortens the life of both components. I've diagnosed alternators and starters as failed, and after cleaning the terminals, everything worked fine. The corrosion was creating a voltage drop that made the system appear weak when the components were actually fine. Use a wire brush and a mix of baking soda and water. Coat the terminals with dielectric grease after cleaning. 5 minutes, twice a year. A new battery costs $150, an alternator costs $400, a starter costs $300. Most quick lube places don't look at the terminals. There's no line item for terminal cleaning, so it doesn't happen. Number 11. Fix oil leaks immediately. Don't tolerate any seep. Japanese buyers won't buy a car with even a small oil seep. In the West, people drive around with oil-soaked engines for years, top off the oil, and keep going. Oil leaks don't stay small. The gasket deteriorates further. The leak gets worse. Oil drips onto exhaust components and burns. It smells, it smokes, it can start a fire. Oil leaking on the ground is an environmental issue and illegal in some states. Beyond that, oil leaks coat the engine in grime that acts as insulation, traps heat, and causes sensors and wiring harnesses to fail prematurely. A valve cover gasket replacement costs about $300. An oil pan gasket costs around $400. Letting it go can lead to an engine fire, a failed emissions test, or a seized engine if you run it low on oil without realizing. I worked on a Civic that caught fire in a parking lot. The valve cover gasket had been leaking for months. Oil dripped onto the exhaust manifold. On a hot day, it ignited. The engine bay was destroyed. Western buyers tolerate small leaks because they don't see immediate harm. Japanese buyers see any leak as a maintenance failure and fix it the same week. Number 12. Replace inline fuel filters every 30,000 miles. Most modern cars have in-tank fuel filters integrated into the fuel pump assembly. But older cars and many trucks still have inline filters that need regular service. A clogged fuel filter restricts fuel flow. Your fuel pump has to work harder, runs hotter, draws more current, and eventually burns out. Fuel pumps are expensive and a pain to replace because they sit inside the fuel tank. I've replaced fuel pumps on Toyotas and Hondas that failed early because the inline filter was never changed. The pump was pulling fuel through a clogged filter for 50,000 miles, overheated, and died. An inline fuel filter costs $20. Labor to replace it is about $60. A fuel pump costs $400 and labor to drop the tank and swap it costs another $300. That's a $700 repair prevented by an $80 service. Fuel filters disappeared from most service menus because newer cars integrate them into the pump. But if you've got an older vehicle, it's still there and it still needs changing. Number 13. Replace the PCV valve every 60,000 miles. The positive crankcase ventilation valve is one of the smallest, cheapest parts that can cause massive engine damage when it fails. It regulates pressure inside your engine by venting blow-by gases back into the intake to be burned. If it gets clogged, pressure builds up in the crankcase. That pressure forces oil past gaskets and seals. You get oil leaks, oil in the intake, and carbon buildup on intake valves. In severe cases, the pressure blows out the rear main seal. A PCV valve costs about $12 and takes 5 minutes to replace. I've seen engines with destroyed rear main seals because a $15 PCV valve was clogged. The rear main seal replacement required pulling the transmission. The job cost $1,800. Almost no one checks the PCV valve because it's not on the standard service checklist. Japanese mechanics check it during every major service because they know what a clogged one does to the rest of the engine. Number 14. Replace serpentine belts at 60,000 miles. Never stretch timing belt intervals. In Japan, belt replacement intervals are treated as non-negotiable. In the US, people push them. A serpentine belt drives your alternator, power steering pump, water pump, and AC compressor. If it breaks, all those systems stop simultaneously. Your battery dies, your engine overheats, you're stranded. A timing belt, if your engine has one, keeps the camshaft and crankshaft synchronized. If it breaks on an interference engine, the pistons hit the valves. Bent valves, damaged pistons, sometimes a destroyed cylinder head. Replace your serpentine belt every 60,000 miles. Replace your timing belt at the interval specified in your owner's manual, usually between 60,000 and 100,000 miles. A serpentine belt costs $40 and $80 in labor. A timing belt job costs $500 to $1,000. An interference engine with a snap timing belt costs $3,000 to rebuild. I've seen it happen on Hondas, Toyotas, and Subarus. The owner knew the belt was due, they waited 6 months. The belt snapped on the highway, the engine was done. Shops will tell you the belt looks fine. Japanese mechanics don't care how it looks. They care how many miles are on it. Rubber degrades with heat and time, not just visible wear. Here's what you know now that most used car buyers will never think to ask about. Japanese owners treat every fluid as a consumable with a specific lifespan. They don't wait for a symptom. They don't wait for a warning light. They follow intervals that seem excessive until you see a car with 350,000 miles that still drives like it has 80,000. They spend a few $100s a year on maintenance to avoid spending thousands on repairs. The complete schedule looks like this. Every 15,000 miles, cabin air filter. Every 30,000 miles, transmission fluid, engine air filter, inline fuel filter if applicable. Every 50,000 miles, differential fluid, power steering fluid. Every 60,000 miles, coolant transfer case fluid, spark plugs, PCV valve, serpentine belt. Every 2 years regardless of mileage, brake fluid. Every 6 months, battery terminal cleaning. Every oil change, physical hose inspection, and coolant level check. Twice a year, radiator fin cleaning with a garden hose. At timing belt interval, timing belt, water pump and tensioner together since you're already in there. One approach costs around $300 to $400 a year in planned maintenance. The other approach costs thousands in surprise repairs. Western buyers follow the manufacturer's convenience schedule, skip services that aren't required by law, and wonder why the transmission failed at 130,000 miles. You don't have to maintain it like Americans typically do. You can maintain it like the Japanese do, short intervals. Specific fluids, no waiting for symptoms. The cars that make it to 300,000 miles aren't special. They're just owned by people who treated maintenance as an investment instead of an inconvenience. Drop a comment telling me what you're driving right now and which of these services you're adding to your schedule first. I read every single one.